She was 22 steps from her car. She knew, because she had counted the steps every night for 6 weeks after the first time it happened. The first time she had made it to her car and sat in it for a long time before she could make herself put it in drive. The first time she had decided not to tell anyone, because she did not know what telling anyone would actually do. She was 22 steps from her car when the 2 men came around the corner of the support column at level 3 of the Whitmore Street parking structure in Koreatown, Los Angeles, and one of them said something she had heard before in this garage. From one of them, on 2 other occasions, and the other one positioned himself between her and the ramp. She did not run. There was nowhere to run to. She did not call out. The garage was empty. She stood very still and looked at the space between them and calculated, the way you calculate when you have been calculating this particular distance for 6 weeks, whether there was any version of this moment that ended differently than the last 2 had ended. With her back against a concrete column, sick with something she had never told anyone, making herself as small as possible until they were finished and gone. There was a man at the far end of level 3. He was walking toward the stairwell. He had not seen them yet. He saw them now. He stopped. He did not run in the other direction. He did not pull out a phone. He did not look away and keep walking, the way that all of us have done at one time or another when we have seen something that we told ourselves was not our business. He turned and walked toward them. And what happened in the next 4 minutes is the part of this story that a woman named Cora Espinoza has never been able to tell from the beginning to the end, without stopping at least once. There is a medical center on West 3rd Street in Los Angeles called Meridian West. A mid-size facility, not a teaching hospital, not a trauma center, but the kind of hospital that handles the ordinary emergencies and the extended care in the day-to-day business of a city where people get hurt and get sick and need somewhere to go that is not a 40-minute drive away. The parking structure on Whitmore Street is owned by a separate entity and leased to the hospital. 7 levels, 812 spaces. A daily population of nurses and physicians and administrators and janitorial staff and visitors arriving in the particular state that visiting hospitals puts people in. The 3rd level is the floor assigned to nursing staff on the night rotation, not formally, not in any written policy, but by the accumulated practice of 6 years of night shifts. The nurses who finished at 11:00 or at midnight or at 2:00 in the morning parked on 3 because the attendance booth was visible from the stairwell there, and the overhead lights had been maintained with more consistency than on the other levels. And because there is a kind of safety that exists in shared routine, the knowledge that the other people parking in this section are people you know, people who work where you work, people who would notice if something was wrong. Cora Espinoza had been a registered nurse at Meridian West for 3 years. She worked the night rotation on the medical surgical floor, 12-hour shifts, 3 nights a week, a schedule that had the particular rhythm of a life lived partly in daylight and partly without it. She was 29 years old. She had grown up in East Los Angeles, the second of 4 children, in a household where the question of what you were going to do with your life had a practical urgency that made it feel less like aspiration and more like responsibility. She had known since high school what she was going to do. She had done it. She was good at it, genuinely, observably, in the way that people are good at things when the thing they chose is also the thing they were made for. She drove a 2017 Honda KR-V the color of dark slate, parked in space 314, level 3, every shift. The first incident had been in October, 7 weeks before the night this story takes place. She had been walking to her car at 11:45 when a man she did not recognize had said something to her from the shadows near the column between spaces 308 and 309. She had quickened her pace. He had not followed. She had sat in her car with the doors locked and the engine running and told herself it was nothing. Because telling yourself it is nothing is the first thing you do, and sometimes it is nothing, and sometimes it is not. The second incident had been 3 weeks later. The same man. Closer this time. Something said that she would not repeat to anyone. She had made it to her car. She had driven home with her hands not entirely steady on the wheel. She had not reported it. This requires explanation, because the explanation is the part of this story that is not comfortable and also the part that is the most true. She had not reported it because she was 3 years into a career that she had worked very hard to build. In a facility where the culture around these conversations was not as clear as the policies on paper made it appear. And because she had watched 2 other women in her department navigate the process of reporting something, and emerge from it feeling that the process had cost them more than the silence would have. She was not sure this was fair. She was sure that it was real, and she had made a calculation. The kind of calculation that a woman in her position makes, and that no one outside of that position has any standing to second guess. That silence was safer than the alternative. The third incident was the night of a Thursday in late November. She had worked until midnight. She walked to the stairwell at 12:08. She pushed through the door to level 3 and started counting. She got to 22. Their names were Derek Poole and a man who went by Fitch, whose given name appeared in no document Cora ever saw, and whose role in what followed was primarily to stand between her and the ramp while Derek spoke. Derek Poole was 33 years old and had been, for the past 2.5 years, doing the particular kind of drifting that a man does when he has had something. A job, a plan, a version of himself he could present to other people, and has lost it, and has not yet found a way to grieve the loss cleanly. He had worked 5 years in a warehouse distribution center in Vernon, a job that had required nothing of him but his presence and his body, and that he had been good at precisely because nothing more was required, and he had lost it in a layoff that was not about him, but had landed on him the way impersonal things land, entirely, as though it were personal. He had not been a cruel person before that. He had been, by most accounts of people who had known him in that period, someone who kept to himself, who paid his rent on time, who showed up for things he said he would show up for. What happened in the 2.5 years after was not a straight line to this parking garage. It was a gradual accumulation of smaller decisions, each one defensible in the moment, none of them defensible across the span of time they covered. He had started spending time with Fitch because Fitch was available, and because availability, when you have lost your structure, becomes its own kind of gravity. He had started doing the things Fitch did because they were things to do. He had not, on the first occasion in this garage, understood entirely what was happening until it was already happening. This is not offered in mitigation. It is offered because the framework of this story requires that the people in it be understood as people, not because understanding them excuses anything, but because a story that requires a monster to make its point is a story that cannot be applied to the world as it actually exists, where most of the worst things are done by ordinary people in accumulated small decisions rather than by monsters who announce themselves. What Derek Poole had become. In the parking garage on level 3 of the Whitmore Street structure on a Thursday night in late November was someone who had made enough of those decisions that there was now a woman 22 steps from her car with nowhere to run, and he was the reason. He did not see the man at the far end of level 3. Fitch did not see him either. Keanu Reeves had been visiting a friend at Meridian West. The friend had been admitted 4 days earlier for a cardiac procedure, not an emergency, a scheduled intervention. The kind of thing that is serious enough to require admission and not serious enough to require that anyone rearrange their lives around it. He had come on 3 of the 4 evenings, parking on level 3 because the attendant on duty had waved him up there when the lower levels were full, arriving in a dark gray hoodie and jeans worn nearly white at the knees, and the old work boots that appeared in every story anyone tells about him in civilian life, as though they are the constant and everything else changes around them. He was walking toward the stairwell at 12:09 in the morning when he came around the column at space 307 and saw what was in front of him. He saw the woman, the stillness of her, the way she was standing with her weight slightly back, which is not how people stand when they are having a conversation they chose to be in. He saw the 2 men, the positioning, the particular geometry of it. He understood what he was looking at in approximately 2 seconds. He stopped. He was 60 feet away. He did not run. Running changes the energy of a situation before you are close enough to know what the situation requires. He walked, deliberately, without hurry, the way you walk when you want to be seen approaching. He said, at a distance that carried, "Hey." Just that. Derek Poole turned around. Fitch turned around. The man in the gray hoodie was walking toward them at an even pace, hands visible, not raised, the way hands are visible when someone is making a point of showing you they are not holding anything, and that they have not come for a fight, but that they have absolutely come. Keanu stopped at a distance of about 12 feet. He looked at Derek. He said, "I think you should go." Derek looked at him. He was assessing, the way a man assesses a situation when he has been doing things in this parking garage that he does not want a witness to and has just acquired a witness. He said, "Mind your business." Keanu said, "I am minding it." A beat that lasted long enough to be a decision. Derek looked at Fitch. Fitch looked at Derek. Something passed between them that was not words. The rapid, wordless renegotiation of 2 people who had arrived at a situation under one set of conditions and were now under different conditions. The man in the gray hoodie had not raised his voice, had not made a move, had done nothing except stand there at 12 feet with his hands visible and said 3 words. But he was still there. And he was not going to stop being there. Derek said something under his breath. He moved past Keanu, giving him a wide berth, the berth of someone who is retreating but has decided to call it leaving, and Fitch followed, and they went toward the ramp, and the sound of their footsteps went with them. And then there was the particular silence of a concrete structure at night after something has just stopped happening. Keanu looked at Cora. She was still standing in the same place. He said, quietly, "Are you okay?" She said, "Yes." Then, "No." They sat in her car for 22 minutes. Not because he asked to, or because she invited him in the formal sense of an invitation, because he walked with her to space 314. And when she got to the door and her hands were not cooperating with the key fob, he stood next to her without saying anything, and when she finally got the door open, she sat down in the driver's seat, and he stayed standing outside it. And after a moment, she looked at the passenger seat, in a way that was a question. And he walked around and got in. He did not tell her what to do. He did not tell her who to call, or what to say when she called them. He did not offer a speech about what she deserved, or what the hospital owed her, or what options she had. He sat in the passenger seat of a 2017 Honda Kia RV, the color of dark slate, and was present in the particular way of someone who understands that presence is sometimes the only thing that is actually being asked for. She talked. Not about the garage, at first. About the shift. About a patient on the medical surgical floor who had been there for 11 days and who was going home tomorrow, which was a good thing, and about the paperwork that went with it, which was a great deal of paperwork. About the drive home, which was 23 minutes when there was no traffic and 40 when there was. Then about the first time. Then about the second time. He listened. He did not interrupt. He did not offer premature comfort or tell her that it was going to be okay in the way that makes the person being told feel that the person saying it wants the conversation to be over. He listened the way someone listens when they believe that what they are hearing matters. When she was finished, he said, "Has anyone at the hospital been told about this?" She said, "No." He said, "Will you think about that?" She said, "I've been thinking about it for 6 weeks." He said, "I know. I'm asking something different. Not whether you've been thinking about it. Whether there is a version where you tell someone, the right someone, and it doesn't cost you what you're afraid it will cost you." She looked at the steering wheel. He said, "I'm not saying that version is guaranteed. I'm saying it might exist. And you might be the person who finds it." A long pause. He said, "There's someone at that hospital who is going to walk out of this garage tonight and feel like they can keep doing this. I don't know how to make that stop. But you might." She did not say anything for a moment. Then she said, "I'm scared." He said, "I know." He did not say anything else. He did not need to. They sat in the car for a while longer, and the concrete of level 3 held them in its particular quiet, and at some point the balance shifted from the weight of what had happened to the weight of what might be possible, and she could feel it shift. The way you feel the moment in a long night, when the dark has gotten as dark as it is going to get, and something else is beginning. She said, "What's your name?" He told her. She looked at him. She said, "You're." He said, "Yes." She looked back at the steering wheel. Then, at him. She said, "Thank you." He said, "Drive safe." He got out of the car. He walked to the stairwell. He pushed through the door, and the sound of the door closed behind him, and she sat alone in space 314 on level 3, with the engine running and the heater going, and her hands in her lap. She sat there for 4 minutes. Then she drove home. She did not sleep much that night. She lay in her apartment in Silver Lake, listening to the street sounds and thinking about what he had said, not the version where you tell someone, because she had been around that thought enough times to know its shape. The different thing he had said. Whether there is a version where you tell someone and it doesn't cost you what you're afraid it will cost you, you might be the person who finds it. In the morning, she called her union representative. His name was Robert Canfield, a man she had met exactly once at a department orientation 18 months earlier, and who had given her a card that she had put in her work bag and never used. She still had it. She found it in the small pocket on the inside of the bag, where she kept things she did not want to lose, but did not know what to do with. Robert Canfield picked up on the second ring. She told him what she was going to tell him. He listened without interrupting. When she was finished, he said he wanted her to send him a written account of all 3 incidents, as detailed as she could make it, by end of day Friday. He said he was going to loop in the hospital's patient safety officer and the HR department simultaneously, and that this approach, simultaneous rather than sequential, had a specific purpose that he would explain to her before any meeting happened. She asked him what the purpose was. He said, "It makes it significantly harder for any single person in the process to manage the situation in a direction that isn't in your interest." She said, "Have you done this before?" He said, "Twice." Both times it worked the way it was supposed to. She sent the written account on Friday at 4 Duo in the afternoon. 1,240 words. She had written it 3 times before she sent it, each version clearer than the last, until the third version said exactly what had happened in the order it happened, without apology and without exaggeration, and she had read it once more and sent it before she could change her mind. The process that followed was not comfortable. She had known it would not be comfortable. There were 3 meetings over 11 days, each one with Robert Canfield present, each one conducted in a room that had more people in it than she had expected. And at each one she said what she had written and answered what she was asked, and did not apologize for any of it. The hospital's legal team became involved on day 7. On day 9, Derek Poole and a man whose given name turned out to be Russell Fitch were issued trespass notices from the Whitmore Street structure and the Meridian West campus. On day 11, the hospital's security director presented a revised protocol for the Whitmore Street structure: 2 additional cameras on level 3, a security walk at 11 clo and 12:30 on nights when the rotation turned over, and a direct line staffed until 1 glock a.m. for night shift workers who wanted an escort to their vehicle. It was not everything. She had not expected everything. What she had expected was the thing Robert Canfield had promised, which was a process that moved in her direction. And it had. The night shift nurses in her department found out about the protocol change through the standard communications that the hospital sent when policies were updated. They did not know, at first, where it had come from. Then they did. It moved through the department the way significant information moves through a department, steadily, without announcement, in the spaces between shifts and in the locker room, and in the 3-minute conversations near the elevator bank that hold more than 3 minutes' worth of weight. A nurse named Priscilla, who had worked the night rotation for 7 years, and who had, over those 7 years, accumulated her own private archive of experiences in the Whitmore Street structure that she had never told anyone about, found Cora in the break room on a Tuesday evening before a shift and told her that she had done something that other people would benefit from for a long time. Cora said she had had help. Priscilla said, "The help doesn't matter. What you did with it does." Robert Canfield used the case. They identified. The specific details altered. In a training session he delivered 6 months later to union representatives from 4 Southern California healthcare systems. The session was about how to run parallel escalation processes in harassment and safety cases to prevent the institutional management of complaints. He had been developing the material for 3 years and had been waiting for a case clean enough to use as the primary example. This was that case. One of the representatives in that training, a woman from a hospital system in the Inland Empire, took the approach back to her facility and used it in a case of her own the following spring. The case resolved in 11 days. She called Robert Canfield afterward to tell him. He called Cora to tell her. She was between patients when her phone rang. She let it go to voicemail. She listened to it on her break, Robert's voice telling her, in the brief, factual way of a man who deals in outcomes, that something she had set in motion had traveled further than the parking structure on Whitmore Street, that a woman she had never met had been able to do something that Cora had done, because Cora had done it first. She sat with her coffee in the break room and listened to the message twice. Then, she went back to her patients. Keanu Reeves visited his friend at Meridian West one more time after the night in the parking garage, 4 days later, when the friend was discharged. He came in the morning, which was different from his usual evening visits, because the discharge was scheduled for 10:00, and he wanted to be there for it. He parked in the structure on Whitmore Street. He took the elevator, not the stairs. He walked through the hospital the way he always walks through places, without announcement, at a pace that suggests he knows where he is going and is not in a hurry to get there. He did not stop at the medical surgical floor. He did not look for Cora Espinoza. He did not know what had happened after that night. He did not know about Robert Canfield or the 1,240 words, or the 11 days or the cameras on level 3. He had sat in a car for 22 minutes and said some things and gotten out. That was the extent of what he had done. The rest was someone else's work entirely. He helped his friend into the car in the discharge bay, made sure the prescriptions were in order, made sure there was someone at home who knew the instructions. Then he drove away. He was not thinking about the parking garage, or the woman in the dark slate Kia RV, or the 2 men who had retreated down the ramp. He had thought about it some, in the days between. He hoped she was okay. He thought she probably was. He did not know that he was right. There is a detail I did not include in the main body of this story, because I was not sure what to do with it. When Cora sat down to write the 1,240 words on Friday afternoon, she had a hard time beginning. She knew what she wanted to say. She knew the order of events, but the first sentence resisted her for almost an hour. What finally got her moving was something she came back to from the night in the car. Not what he had said about telling someone, not the thing about the right version existing, something smaller. The moment when she had said she was scared, and he had said "I know," and not said anything else. He had not told her not to be scared. He had not told her that courage was available to her, or that she was stronger than she knew, or any of the things that people say when they want you to feel better in a way that is mostly about making themselves feel better. He had just said, "I know." And then he had stayed. She wrote the first sentence, then the second, then the rest. I keep thinking about that, about how much it matters sometimes that someone simply stays. Doesn't fix it, doesn't resolve it, doesn't tell you who you could be if you were braver. Just says, "I know," and then is still there. Most of us have been in a parking structure at midnight. Not literally, but in the version of it that life builds. The moment where the geography of what is happening has become unfavorable, and you are counting steps to your car and the numbers keep coming out the same. What we mostly want, in that moment, is not a speech. It's the sound of someone's footsteps coming toward us instead of away. I think about whether I would be the person walking toward. I hope I would be. I know it is not guaranteed. This story is fictional, inspired by Keanu Reeves' well-known and often documented instinct to step toward people in difficulty rather than away from them. Drop a comment and tell me what stayed with you, the moment that kept coming back. Share this with someone who might need it today. Subscribe if you want more stories like this one. See you in the next one.